TCL is a proud sponsor of the SKOR North Studios. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Rebound comes down to Karl-Anthony. 1 second, gets it away for the win at the buzzer. Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness, does that hurt?
Same way I always do it, in a tough time, is you continue to coach, you continue to attack the day, and take care of tomorrow so that you can take care of the day after that. And that's the only way I know how. Our group will be in there working tomorrow.
Welcome into the show. Mackey and Judd, Declan producing, and Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News. It's inside information about your favorite local sports teams. The Scoop with Doogie podcast you can find on Apple, Spotify, SKORNorth.com. And Duke joins us every Thursday as part of Reckless Speculation Thursday. And for the audio audience, for the radio and podcast audience, you didn't see the visual, but for the YouTube audience, we had Ryan Saunders. We actually played the video clip of Ryan Saunders. Like, we know Ryan pretty well, and we've seen him since he was, a basketball player at, was it Wayzata? Dude, he looked glazed over, and I don't know if it was just the disappointment of blowing a 20-point lead, but oof, I saw his body language, and I was like, whoa.
Did you see the meltdown? Like, if you saw the meltdown, for him to look that shook is not surprising. That was, by the Timberwolves standards, gents, like this is the impressive context to the meltdown to me. By their standards, which is some glorious losses, and by that I don't mean good. I mean, they lost that. This was near the top. Like, you had to take the perfect sauce for putting together a recipe, Dukes, for trying to lose and achieve it, and they did.
We sat here, gentlemen, last Thursday morning after they lost to Memphis the previous night. They had blown a double-digit second-half lead. Memphis was down Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Justice Winslow. That was a head-scratching loss. That loss 8 days ago to Memphis doesn't compare to what we saw last night. They had the ball with 2:55 to go, up 10. The win probability was 99.5%. Yet they somehow found a way to lose. They were up 16 late third quarter. They were up 20 early second half. Orlando wasn't making shots last night. Orlando is down key players. You can talk all you want about the Wolves, make excuse after excuse. The Wolves are down, guys. Orlando last night was down 2 pretty key players. Now, Fultz is out for the year with the ACL injury. And they were down 3 rotational guys. The other guy, Bamba, is at least a rotational guy. So that was a depleted Orlando roster. Ryan Saunders deserves heat because so Jared Vanderbilt grabs that rebound with about 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Aaron Gordon, by the way, was wide open. Like, we talk all we want about David Vanterpool eventually being an NBA head coach. David Vanterpool hasn't done anything here in Minnesota to convince me that he belongs as some team's head coach. I haven't seen a player that open in crunch time in forever. Aaron Gordon didn't have anybody within 10 feet of him, but he misses a wide open 3. The Wolves grabbed the rebound. They had 2 timeouts at that moment. Jared Vanderbilt is not a good free throw shooter. Ryan Saunders, there was an official right next to him, like 2 or 3 feet away. Ryan instantly has to go timeout, timeout. You can't let Jared Vanderbilt hold the ball, then get fouled. It was inevitable. It just was that he was going to miss at least one. And in this case, he misses both free throws. Then Ben says, unbelievable. No, Dave, it wasn't unbelievable. It's the Wolves. It really wasn't. Even though Karl-Anthony is less than a 30% three-point shooter. He hasn't been making threes all season. He's like falling this way, right? It doesn't help for the audio and podcast audience, but for the YouTube audience, he wasn't even like squared up, but you just knew, like, didn't you know, Judd, we talked late last night. Didn't you know the second that Karl-Anthony released that ball, that it was going in, that Orlando was winning that game at the buzzer?
And guess what? The Wolves deserved exactly what they got.
Yes, because like D'Angelo Russell was non-existent in the fourth quarter. right? Like Vucevic takes over late in that game because they can't offer any resistance in the paint. It's a messed up roster. At the moment, minus Cat, they don't have a capable 5-man or a capable 4-man. I like Vanderbilt's potential, but I can't say right now play Jared Vanderbilt 30 minutes at the 4. Naz Reid, sure, 5-6 minutes a night, but I don't want Naz Reid, especially on the defensive end, playing 30-something minutes. They don't have a capable 5-man or 4-man. Ed Davis is a smart guy. He helps in some aspects, but Ed Davis is really not a functioning NBA player at this point. He looks like a buyout candidate to me. Maybe he ends up back in Brooklyn in a couple weeks when teams start to buy guys out, because that's the way this thing is trending. And they are the worst team in the Western Conference. I get it. They are the youngest team in the Western Conference. But guess what? Memphis found a way last year when they were incredibly young to win games. So I'm not all in on this being the youngest roster, that it's all about them being young. There are still so many mistakes, so many mental breakdowns. Is it the way that the Wolves staff is coaching these guys, or lack thereof? Or are these guys mentally incapable of grasping what the Wolves coaches are trying to teach them? Whatever it is, I can just tell you, this roster is incredibly broken. If you want to call for Ryan Saunders' head, fine. Go for it. I appreciate your passion. I'm glad that you're not apathetic at this point. But let's not let Gerson Rosas off the hook. The Ricky Rubio trade looks like a disaster. They gave up a draft pick for Ed Davis when he was going to be bought out. So that was an asset they gave away that they didn't need to give away. I told you guys about Jarrett Culver. Culver has a good game against Detroit, has a good preseason. I get all these Twitter mentions saying, Doogie, you're a fool. You're a moron. You don't know what you're talking about Culver. Yeah, funny. Those people don't even exist in my timeline anymore. I told you, you trade Jarrett Culver when you can, because I don't see it. The Wolves moved up for Jarrett Culver. Like, there are a lot of swings and misses for Gerson Rosas. So if you want to slam Ryan, fine, slam Ryan. But I'm just telling you, Gerson Rosas has not done Ryan any favors.
I want to read you guys a quote here. This was D'Angelo Russell after the game last night, and I'm getting this from The Athletic is where I'm pulling this particular quote. And before I read this quote, I want to piggyback off something that Doogie was talking about, which is the idea of this roster was supposed to be that they were young, bunch of athletic, interchangeable parts, right? Like, the vision for this team wasn't that they were going to win 50 games. It wasn't that they were going to I don't even think they had aspirations of making the playoffs necessarily this year, but I think it was.
Well, Glenn Taylor did. Jake Layman did. I mean, others behind the scenes, Phil, did. They absolutely did. So not everybody. It wasn't universal, but Glenn Taylor, the owner, is on record saying his expectation is the playoffs.
Well, now I'm out on Jake Layman after he thought that the Wolves were going to.
Yeah, that's the final straw.
Yeah, that was the final straw for me. But I think the thought was, let's get a bunch of interchangeable parts, wing players, guys who can move up and down the court, Anthony Edwards, Jarrett Culver, right? And let's put Karl-Anthony Towns in the middle of it. And in fairness, like, Karl-Anthony Towns has barely played this season, so that's a huge thing that needs to be taken into account. But when I see this quote from D'Angelo Russell, all right, where he says, quote, "We're in a state of mind where we relax in the fourth quarter. The last 3 minutes of the game, we relax a little bit. We don't lock into the scouting report." All right, well, if we're talking about the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers coming off a three-peat, and you want to relax a little bit against the Magic in a mid-January game, that's okay. If you are the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade Heat from 10 years ago, and you've won back-to-back titles, and you're the best players in the NBA, and you want to kick it, you want to just sort of kick your feet up with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter against a garbage team, I'm okay with that. When you have one playoff appearance as a franchise since 2004, when you have 2 playoff series wins in 30 years of existence, you don't get the luxury. I don't care if these guys weren't around for the better part of that Timberwolves failed generation, but like, you don't get the luxury of relaxing in the fourth quarter. That is such a huge indictment on everybody. Gerson, Ryan, D'Angelo, like, where is the leadership and where is the drive? At absolute worst, this team was supposed to be filled with energy and youth and was going to be pesky, and they are none of those things, Doogie.
No, they're not. That quote from D'Angelo Russell is laughable. He's not a leader. I'm sorry. if you talk to people in Golden State, in Brooklyn, in Los Angeles, there's a reason why he's on his 4th team. He is an elite shot creator and oftentimes an elite shot maker. But is he worth $27 million a year? Heck no, he's not. He doesn't make his teammates better. He doesn't play a lick of defense, although we've actually seen him have a pulse a little bit in recent weeks on defense. But for the most part, he's not a defender. He doesn't attack the rim, although he started to do that a little bit for a few games recently, but not so much last night. I think we're starting to see more and more. We've talked about this, and we'll continue to talk about it, that at the time of the trade in February, I took a poll of 10 to 12 league executives that I have access to via text message. It was about 50-50. 50% said, I'll take Wiggins, even with his warts, because of the first-round pick attached. I don't want anything to do with D'Angelo Russell. And then 50% said, yeah, why not? That's Cat's guy. Sure, roll the dice. I'll admit, at the time, I said, do the trade. So I'll admit that. I said I would have done the trade. But can you imagine if whenever the draft is, in August or whenever, later this year, if the Wolves have to give the Warriors pick 4, pick 5, or pick 6, it's top 3 protected. Can you imagine that train wreck if the Wolves have to do that? I'm just saying, we're seeing that if D'Angelo Russell is your alpha or your number 2 guy, in all likelihood, you are not going to be a good team. The outlier year is a couple years ago in Brooklyn. He was the alpha. Now, I think his supporting cast was markedly better than what we have here. But the comeback is that Nets team started 8-18, and it was in the weaker conference, the Eastern Conference at the time. He actually found a way to vault them up to the 6th seed. They made the playoffs with him as the alpha, and they made the playoffs as the 6th seed. But I'm telling you, that's the outlier. That was a mirage. That is not the trend. I'm telling you, talk to people across the league. They will tell you, you are not going anywhere if D'Angelo Russell is one of your main players.
So Dukes at 3-10 now, with Cat having obviously been out for the majority of the time, how much trouble is Ryan Saunders potentially in now? Because I do think that despite the fact that you could easily say, well, it's not fair because Cat's not playing, blah, 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 there is a comeback that when push comes to shove, there have now been enough instances to see that he might be a good head coach one day. But right now, there's, as you documented, there's situations where he is clearly in too deep. How much trouble do you think when we're talking about a team that loved his dad, that loves him, and that's still owned by a guy who, clearly gave him this break? How much trouble this morning is Ryan Saunders in, or should he be in?
I expect him to be on the practice court when they practice later today. So I don't sense that a firing is imminent. Here is the damning stat. They've had a decent lead 6 times in the 4th quarter this year. They've only won 1 of those games. So when you've lost 5 games with a decent lead in the 4th quarter, that is horrendous. I can tell you, I have a very strong sense, Judd, that internally there are those in the front office asking questions about whether Ryan is capable of really, really leading this team to the promised land. Do I think, though, that Gerson is on the cusp of calling Glenn to seek permission to fire Ryan? No. And, oh, by the way, do I think that Glenn is happy with Gerson? Heck no. So I don't think Gerson is ready to pull that off. Then guess what? Then what do? You make Vanderpool the interim coach? Already established he's not worthy of being the interim coach. You make Gates the interim coach? No, I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me. But if you play that card, if you're Gerson, then all the heat's on you. So I think there's reason to actually keep Ryan in place if you're Gerson. You mentioned Cat. Let's not forget that Cat loves Ryan right now. We can argue that Ryan is too much a player's coach. I've talked about this before. I'll reiterate it, that at some point Ryan has to coach these guys harder, including Cat. So Ryan has a ways to go, but Cat thinks the world of Ryan. Ryan is the ultimate player's coach for better or worse. So he still has the support of that locker room. So to me, as long as he has the support of the locker room, even though it's a very broken roster, it's not like he's lost that locker room. So I don't think a firing is imminent, nor do I think a firing should be imminent. I'll fully admit my bias that Ryan is somebody I've known. Phil, you said, I mean, former Wayzata High School player. I mean, I've known him, and we have mutual friends going back many, many years. So I get it. I understand. You know, when people say fire Ryan, and my comeback is, and if you want to call an excuse, fine, but he's coached D'Lo and Cat for 5 games together. And I just laid out that you're not getting anywhere with D'Lo as a main player. But in all fairness, I would like to see Ryan have a chance to coach D-Lad and Cat, D'Lo and Cat, for more than 5 games together. Let's formulate some strong opinions after the year. If you want to cut the cord on Ryan after the year, fine, so be it. Let's also not forget that Ryan, if he's not the lowest paid coach in the NBA, he's 28th or 29th. So they're saving some money in that regard. Like, who are you bringing in at this point? You know, like, if you're going to bring somebody in like a Kenny Atkinson, you know, somebody of that ilk, you would probably do it after the season anyway. So let's let this season play out. Let's see how Edwards develops. Let's see how McDaniels develops. I mean, that was one positive from last night. The kid they got from Washington with the 28th pick, he showed some flashes last night. Let's see how these rookies develop. You know, I think a lot of this year now at this point, because it doesn't look like it's realistic for them to vault into the top 10. A lot of the rest of this year is about how does Edwards develop? How do these young guys, even though I've formulated a pretty strong conclusion on Culver, but Culver's in that mix. Culver, Edwards, McDaniels, you know, those guys, let's see how they develop. And if we see in 2 or 3 months that those guys have developed, maybe you make a case, you know what, Ryan's done a good job. You bring him back for next season. But I'm just not to the point of saying today, this morning, it's time to fire Ryan.
Yeah. So it does feel like a stretch, just real quick, and then we can talk Twins here. It does feel like a stretch to say that, all right, and I do acknowledge Karl-Anthony Towns is one of the best offensive players in the league, and he makes a huge difference, but there just seems like too much erosion outside of Cat. It's not like, you know, it's not like bringing Cat back fixes a lot of the crap that you've seen in and around these fourth quarters and second halves magically. There's a lot of eroding foundation that they have a lot of work to do with or without Karl-Anthony Towns.
Well, and let me make one more point on Edwards. I worry. Like, is this the right environment for him to truly grow? I have serious concerns about that. So I'm talking about the rest of the year. A lot of the rest of the year is about how Edwards specifically develops. Can he really develop in this climate? I'm just saying, I don't know. I worry about that.
You know, go ahead, Judd. Go ahead, Judd. And I have a nugget.
No, I was just gonna say it's so Wolves, and everything that we are talking about right now, unfortunately, right or wrong, pushes your star player to saying, bleep this. I'm done here. I can't do this. I mean, right? Because he's not going to say, you know what I need to do? I need to get back to work and develop D'Lo and Ant, and I need to do this. He's eventually going to say, I got a lot of friends in this league. Some of them play for Phoenix, which is warm all year round. Yeah. I'd really like to be in Phoenix.
Dude,
seriously.
How about this on Edwards? Because I share that I don't like to hit the panic button after 13 games, but the biggest knock on him coming out of college was a bit of a volume scorer, you know, and some people were saying, well, it's not that he can't shoot or make shots. It's just that he was the only player on his team. And so he would take a lot of contested shots. Like, all right, well, let's see. Well, let's go through some of the numbers through 13 games. He's shooting 35% from the floor, period. He can't make a 3-pointer at a professional clip. And this is the one that I think bothers me the most. Cause like, what can he do? Well, he can get to the rack. And he's a guy that can sort of get anywhere he wants and create shots. He has missed half of his shots from point blank range this season. Inside 3 feet, according to Basketball Reference. He has missed half of his shots from 3 feet to 10 feet. So again, like, get inside the paint, get up close, get a shot that you like, close to the hoop. He's shooting 23% from inside 10 feet up to 3 feet, according to Basketball Reference.
And every time he drives, he thinks he gets fouled. Like, every time he looks like, I was fouled. It's like, that's not how this league works, dude. You're not going to get the foul call every time. Just take the contact and keep going.
He will, though, get more calls as time goes on. I think, sure. I mean, those numbers are alarming, Phil. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not I'm not convinced the 3-point shot is going to be fixed anytime in the near future or even distant future. I do think the percentage at the rim, it's going to go up. He's going to make more shots at the rim. And there is something to be said about spacing in the NBA compared to what he saw at Georgia. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, I worry about, the defense. I mean, he's physically gifted, but can he grasp everything mentally? I mean, is he a smart player? I mean, I don't know. I need to see more in that regard. He's still young, right? I mean, he's 19 years old, right? He turned 19 in August. He could have been a freshman in college this year if he wanted to be. So I'm not ready to say nothing there, but pre-draft, I was on the James Wiseman bandwagon. Everything I've seen from Golden State watching Wiseman is going to be really, really good. I still think in 3, 4, 5 years, when we look back at this draft class, Wiseman is going to be number one. And if not number one, maybe number two. He's going to be above Edwards. So, that's not me, hindsight saying they made a mistake. Wiseman was my guy. I would have tried to play the two bigs together. Anthony Davis played with a big in LA a ton last year. Worked out fine. I know the Spurs was many years ago, but it worked with Duncan and Robinson. It's not like you can't play two bigs together, but the Wolves don't want to do that, so they didn't really pursue that much with Wiseman's camp. They tried to get a meeting with him, but maybe they could have pushed further, pushed getting all the medicals, really done their due diligence on maybe drafting James Wiseman. But they concluded early on they didn't want to play with the two bigs. I mean, they locked in on Edwards pretty darn early. But I'm just saying, I think the numbers, Phil, I think they will go up as time goes on. Like, I'm not ready to say like he's a lost cause or anything like that. Not that you did, but I'm not there yet. But the shot is ugly. It just is, and I don't know how they fix that in the next 1 to 2 years.